Well, pretendians, people faking an Indigenous identity, can cause pain and outrage within the Indigenous community. While strangers may feel the emotional repercussions, how might innocent family members be harmed in the fallout? Well, that's what Red River Métis author Katherena Vermette explores in her new book, Real Ones. A Governor General's Award-winning storyteller, Katherena joined us in studio on Friday to talk more about the book. Katherena, thanks so much for joining us here to talk about your new novel, Real Ones, which looks at how someone faking an Indigenous identity can affect others. Your story focuses on the issues within family dynamics. Can you tell us more about Real Ones?
Well, I really wanted to explore the idea around race shifting, particularly in its impact on us. Those of us who, through no fault of our own, get wrapped up into the story. In this case, it is a completely fictitious novel. It's a mother who's in a very deliberate way appropriating the stories from her daughter and from her ex-husband. And in that, I wanted to kind of get back to the effect it has on the family. Not necessarily the person and their actions. I wanted to come back to that, again, that emotional reality that I like to explore all the time, but the impact it had on them and get her taking up enough space out of the way.
Well, a timely story indeed, as pretendians, as some people call them, are being exposed more often, something that we hear about all the time. What made you want to write about this phenomenon?
Phenomenon is right, hey? It's a really strange word, but it's kind of what it is. And I mean, it's always happened. It's happened for decades, if not since contact. It's always this idea of stealing. It's very much a theft, I think, and a fraud. I feel like we've been confronted by these issues, all of us, over and over. There always seems to be a different case. And every time there was always this surge of conversation that I had my opinions on, and I had my emotional reactivity to it. So that's where the novel started. It ended up, of course, that was a launching pad to so many other kind of, emotional realities that kind of get intertwined in this idea we have of identity and all of the implications therein. But it really started off as that, just kind of that reaction to, and grew from there.
Right. In your other novels, like the multi-award-winning story, The Break, you focus, like you say, on family trauma and reconciling. Why is this, or themes that you like to come back to?
Families are fascinating. Families of mama-daughter stuff is kind of where I live, just because I am a mother and parent, and I also, am a daughter and have been parented, for lack of. And so the dynamics of how that, interacts with our lives, how much impact it has on us, I think is amazing. I don't like very easy good and bad. I don't like villains and perpetrators. I kind of like exploring all the building blocks that make individuals very individual, and we all are very individual. And I really like to talk about how families do that, and how, we can all be so very different from one another and so very much the same.
Yeah, a lot of nuances to family. So you were this is huge news, I think. You were recently appointed as a senior editor at Simon & Schuster Canada. Congrats, that's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
As a Michif who has navigated the literary world for more than a decade, what do you think the significance is of an Indigenous person holding a position like this?
It's new for Simon & Schuster. It's not new for everyone else. I think we're slowly changing, and those of us who have, been lucky enough to get ahead in this business, for lack of a better word, we're all kind of just trudging along. But we are now in positions of being editors. There's a few of us in Canada, a few Indigenous folks living on that side of the literary world. I feel like we're all working together and all doing different things around just kind of keeping our stories centered wherever possible.
Like you say, not the only place to do it, but certainly a pretty massive publisher to be doing such. As somebody who has been around the industry for a while, how have you seen it change to, reflect stories from Indigenous peoples?
Oh, hell. I mean, we can cut that, right? I think there's been a huge shift. My first book was published in 2012. And since then, particularly after all the appropriation controversy around 2015, I think there's been a huge shift in how many Indigenous authors are getting published all across the board, how many different Indigenous stories, and the diversity within Indigenous stories. Like, not only in our individual nations and cultures, there's so many differences, but in how we tell stories, how these individuals choose to tell their stories, what genre they choose to tell. Some of us are funny, some of us, more like me, a little bit too depressing, but we're all kind of, enwrapped in this conversation that I think is fascinating to watch.
Well, Katherena, fascinated to talk to you. Congrats on the new work and on the new gig as well. And thanks so much for taking some time for us.
Thank you, Marcy.